I think we can finally get started. Right? The first panel is titled "Meeting the Online Challenge: Digital Solutions for Engaging Different Kinds of Learners." It's a three-person panel. First is Kate Mazza. She received her PhD in history from the Graduate Center. She has taught online at Lehman College in the General Studies Department, where she teaches a course on sex and gender in U.S. history. She is currently developing an online course in women's history for Yeshiva University this summer. Her current research explores corporal punishment in American education in the 19th and 20th century. The second producer is Thomas Hafer. Received his doctorate in history from the Graduate Center. His work looks at concepts of art, sexuality, and identity espoused by a group of bohemian filmmakers from the 1930s to the 1970s. He teaches regularly at John Jay College, Brooklyn College, and St. Francis College. For online classes, he has taught history of New York State at Marist College and crime and punishment in U.S. history at John Jay. Our final is Paul Naish. Naish. I knew I was going to screw that up. I am so sorry.
No problem. My kids just call me Naish.
He is a historian of the early American Republic who teaches history and social sciences at CUNY's Guttman Community College. After a career as managing director at Inside Broadway, an arts education program that makes theater tickets available to public schools to recognize student achievement and sends actors, directors, musicians, and artists into classrooms to teach, Paul has become a full-time doctoral student at CUNY's Graduate Center. He completed his 2011 dissertation, Safe Distance, U.S. Slavery, Latin America, and American Culture, 1826 to 1861, under the supervision of James Oates. The project was awarded the 2012 Zuckerman Prize by the McNeil Center of Early American Studies at the University of Pennsylvania. A manuscript based on this dissertation is under contract with the University of Pennsylvania Press.
Thanks for the introductions. Good afternoon, everyone. My paper could really be called A Discussion of Online Discussions. When I first started to teach an online course, one of my concerns was that I would lose the class discussion that I really came to value. Yet, as I continued teaching online for several semesters, I found that online discussions were not exactly worse. They were different, very different in nature. This paper reviews some ideas regarding the challenges and opportunities of online class discussions, using Blackboard mainly. My online course has one main due date a week for a significant amount of reading and lecture material, and this comes along with review questions for the students. I then set up a mandatory discussion board open to all students for the next few days, and I pose 3 questions. I also post a YouTube video on the material and supplementary notes to inform the readings. Now, in online discussions, some comments are repetitive from the students, but this is inevitable. People often have similar thoughts about what they're reading and learning. Obviously, it's also difficult to recreate a classroom scenario with a give and take, a back and forth from the teacher and students and among other students. Perhaps this could be done with web conferencing tools where students see other students and the professor live, online through various types of platforms. Yet, I see this presenting other challenges because many of our students are very busy, professionals, have families, and they value the flexibility of online courses, being able to do whenever they want. Despite these drawbacks, I'd like to highlight 3 areas where I see generally, which I see generally as benefits for online discussions. I am drawing from my own teaching, also from an anonymous survey that I gave my students, and got 11 replies so far, and also an article from the journal Innovative Higher Education. It's called "It's Easier to Be Yourself When You Are Invisible." Female college students discuss their online classroom experience. While this focuses on females, I still think it's very relevant to this general conversation. So first, I'd like to refer to openness in online discussions. I found students comment more freely in an online discussion than in traditional class format. In my class survey, 8 students out of 11 stated they were more open in online discussions. The remaining 3 said they were equally open as they would be in person. These findings are seen in the article I referred to, where students comment that the online forum makes them less self-conscious about sharing their views. In my course, one student who really shined in our online discussions stated, "Overall, I learned a lot this semester and I enjoyed discussing what I learned with my classmates through the discussion board. I like to learn from them and I'm able to feel confident enough to express my thoughts since in a face-to-face class, I am really shy." The second area is related and regards the different skills developed online versus in class during these discussions. While we think of digital communication as instantaneous, in the online discussion forum, it actually functions to slow down the conversation. It allows for greater deliberation between the question, answer, and further replies. While it takes away the pressure of thinking and speaking spontaneously in a classroom setting, it can add to the development of slow, deliberate, critical thinking. It can promote greater reflection through writing. This opens up a new method of class participation that can bring out different strengths in different people. Lastly, I'd like to make a point regarding participation. I found that requiring students to participate in online discussion is more straightforward and easier to grade. Everything is in writing and you can refer back. Sometimes when requiring class participation in a traditional setting, students attend class but might not participate very much. Perhaps more vocal students step up to say most of the main points, and other students are more inclined to sit back and listen. Online, more students participate and tend to write more than they might say in person. In my survey, 9 out of 10 students stated that they wrote more in discussion than they would say in a traditional course. While some of the comments are repetitive, as I said earlier, students certainly do participate in greater numbers. So in sum, while exploring this topic of online discussion, I have grown to value the online discussion board as a forum that allows for a greater level of class participation and more openness from students. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I'm Thomas Hafer. I teach at John Jay College. And this semester I'm teaching Crime and Punishment in U.S. History for the first time as an online course. So today I'd like to talk a bit about crafting a research paper for an upper level online class and about my experience in online peer review. And this is all done through Blackboard. So the research assignment that I have for this class is to contextualize a trial transcript as a primary source. John Jay Library actually has a great database of digitized trial transcripts from New York City from 1850 to 1950. And so students will go and pick one of those, and then they have to find some scholarly articles, 3 of them, to contextualize it and serve as secondary sources. This is great because it's all online, and then the trial transcripts are really wonderful because they're so obscure that it makes it very difficult for students to plagiarize or pull stuff off of websites. John Jay students tend to have sort of an interest in crime, but they come at it from a lot of different angles. So, so the students can sort of begin by choosing one of these different trials or crimes, looking for a trial that relates to that, and then they can approach that topic from a lot of different sort of contexts. So I've seen, for instance, students take the same trial transcript about prostitution, and one might look at prostitution more broadly, others will look at gender roles and marital relations in that period. Other students will look at immigration and language challenges, and another student will look at sort of courtroom procedures and things like that. So again, no matter what their interest is, that provides for a lot of sort of flexibility and creativity in that assignment. When I adapted this assignment, which I've used in regular classroom courses before. The students, I knew the students would need sort of a lot more scaffolding. In the classroom, I end up dispelling a lot of misunderstandings or confusions through sort of verbal instruction, and I wouldn't have that. So I had students do a first smaller paper where they just summarize the trial transcript, and that provided them with sort of, this is not what that assignment's going to be, but they actually looked at the materials and started to work with them. Then they do an annotated bibliography, a rough draft, and then peer review. And all of this is stuff that I've done in normal classroom settings, but I was very surprised to find that they played out a little bit different in the online course. The students in my online class were far more eager and willing to help each other out in the peer review than I've had in my in-person classroom settings. A couple major differences. One, when I've given in-class peer reviews, students are using a worksheet with a lot of questions, they'll tend to skip questions that they think are not important or relevant, and that sort of loses that opportunity to provide some feedback. When students are presented with one question at a time in the online setting, they write a lot more and they end up not skipping them, which is very helpful. Additionally, students, I felt, were sort of a little bit more comfortable in addressing the other students. They had built up a stronger rapport and sense of community through earlier discussions boards in the classroom setting. What I found truly surprising was, on almost a whim, I set up a discussion board, sort of an informal discussion board, in conjunction with the peer review. And it just opened that up so students could ask questions or perhaps ask for extra peer reviews or anything that they wanted. And this was informal, ungraded, and completely voluntary. And students actually did a lot in that discussion board to help each other out, which again was not expected of them or gave them no extra credit or anything like that, but just students that needed more help or felt like they were in a position to help other students out took advantage of this discussion board, which is great. So ultimately, when I was crafting this research assignment for my class, I wanted to reduce the opportunity to plagiarize, make it interesting for different students, and try to counteract what I saw as sort of that shift from my instruction in the classroom. And this ended up working really well, where students, could tailor the assignment in any way that they liked, or in a lot of different ways, where they did not have, or at least the temptation to plagiarize was dramatically reduced by using sort of these obscure sources. And then lastly, I mean, found it refreshing to see how much students were willing to go that extra mile in helping each other out in that classroom, which was a very different experience than in the classroom itself. Thank you.
So I teach at Guttman, which I think stole the title of newest CUNY school away from Austin. Sorry about that. And I teach also history. Thomas and Kate and I were at the Graduate Center at the same time. I was a little surprised to be tapped to teach a hybrid class at Guttman because I'm not the most technologically savvy person. This is my telephone, for example. But I decided to look upon it as an opportunity to fix what I had found most unsatisfactory about teaching the in-person version of a class called The History of Urban Life, which is a class in urban history and more specifically New York City history. So I was never able to find a basic text of New York City history that I liked, and the one I selected the students didn't read, and although I supplemented it with book chapters and articles, there was this hole in the center. So I actually resurrected an idea I had when I taught at Lehman as an adjunct, and that was to have the students develop a weekly newspaper that would have all the events of New York City history from 1765 to the present. So the way I do this is in ePortfolio, and the students have an assignment of an article to write 2 out of every 3 weeks on a different topic. A third of the class then is responsible for writing letters to the editor. So I find that this makes the discussion boards a little less artificial. I find lots of times in discussion boards, people feel the need to say something original and they run out of things to say. By writing a letter to the editor, I encourage the students to respond in the character of somebody living at the time that the event is taking place. So we get articles about what's happening in New York City, and then people representing free black people in the Revolution, or runaway slaves right before the Civil War, or immigrants at the turn of the century, responding to things like the dedication of the Statue of Liberty or the opening of Ellis Island. And the kids have a lot of fun, very much as Kate was talking about, sort of becoming anonymous, I think. The paper is done on ePortfolio, and the students submit their work as comments, which gives me the possibility of checking for factual inaccuracies before I post it. But then I actually lay it out as a PDF, and then we actually distribute it in class as a hard copy, and the students sit around on the one day of the week when we meet and read the paper as a communal exercise. And I find this is a good way to actually engage the students in not only the production of information, but thinking about this in real time. And I can tease out ideas as I go along. One of the best parts of teaching, as we all know, is when students teach you something. I'll just tell you that last week I had a student who was assigned to write about the Tweed scandal of 1871, and I assumed the only way to interpret that is the corruption and graft exposed by the building of the Tweed courthouse, now the Department of Education headquarters. This student found information about a riot called the Orange Riot between Irish Protestants and Irish Catholics that killed 60 people in New York in 1871. That was new to me. I'm not an urban historian. And it was put down by the police, who very definitely favored one side. So it was the doorway to a very fruitful discussion about modern day manifestations that are similar to that. I also brought in an actual newspaper from 1835 so that the students could see what a real version of what they had been producing looked like, and passed it around. And I found that was very engaging for them, because suddenly they could see not only had they produced something, but they actually produced something that looked something like what we had produced in class. So thank you very much.